High Gear Filmmaker.
First, if you want to learn more about our 7-point process and how you can apply it to your next film project, then go online. You can see the links in the description at lumen.tv/institute and check out our online community as well. And you can see all these videos and even get more insights on our weekly Q&As. One of the worst car problems, I think, is when your gears, when you have transmission problems. You hear it or you feel it. It's like not running right. And it's expensive. It takes forever to get fixed. And it's hard to find someone that actually does a good job at it. So it's a real pain. And this I want you to think about with your filmmaking and keeping it in high gear. All right, I'm going to read you something. This is from the Wisdom of Solomon. Solomon, he's like, to escape from thy hand is impossible. He's talking about like God, right? Like getting away from God. For the ungodly, refusing to know thee, were scourged by the strength of thy arm, pursued by unusual rains and hail and relentless storms, and utterly consumed by fire. Like these people, like the ungodly, were being like hunted down by the Lord, because I don't know why, what he was doing. Let's see if it tells us. For most incredible of all in the water, which quenches all things, the fire had still greater effect. So in water, they're being pursued by God. Fire is going after these ungodly people, and they're in the water, and the fire goes in the water, and it's worse than if there was no water for fire, unquenchable. Like, this is insane what's happening. And then at one time, the flame was restrained so that it might not consume the creatures sent against the ungodly. So can you imagine? You're like being chased by some creatures, like a bunch of locusts or something like that. And you're chasing them, you're like, oh, here comes a fireball. Oh, thank goodness, a fireball's coming. It'll quench these locusts. And then the fireball does not burn the locusts, but comes after you, like stops, like stops so it doesn't burn the locusts so they can still attack you. This is crazy. But that seeing this, they might know that they were being pursued by the judgment of God. I think I would be totally like, how did that just happen? Why didn't the fireball consume the locusts? And at another time, even in the midst of water, it burned more intensely than fire to destroy the crops of the unrighteous land. Instead of these things, thou didst give thy people the food of angels. Okay, so and instead of all these horrendous things that were happening to the ungodly, God gives his people the bread of angels, the food of angels. And without their toil, he supplied them from heaven with bread ready to eat. So they didn't have to do anything from this. This isn't like, like when they had to toil in the garden because of the Garden of Eden of Adam and Eve's sin, right? For thy sustenance manifested thy sweetness towards thy children, and the bread ministering to the desired of the one who took it was changed to suit everyone's liking. So like everybody has different taste buds. Okay, everyone's got different taste buds. And when they have the bread of angels, the bread from heaven, it's suited to your liking, like particularly to your palate. It's like having your own designer chef bringing you food from heaven. You want to talk about the heavenly banquet? Oh my goodness. And of course, this is all leading to the Eucharist. But so this goes on. It goes on. But here's something that I want you to think about with the gears, all right? We're going to read this part. I'm going to skip ahead. This is like Wisdom 16, chapter 16, around verse 25. Okay, therefore, at that time also changed into all forms it served thy all-nourishing bounty according to the desires of those who had need, so that your sons who you do love, O Lord, I'm taking out the thous and the thises and whoever knows what this is. So that your sons whom you love, O Lord, might learn that it is not from the production of crops that feeds man, but that thy word preserves, that thy word preserves those who trust in you. Okay, I know this is kind of long, but listen to what he's talking about. He's talking about, he's doing all this so that we know that he loves us. He loves you. And that when you're trying to live in his will, following his law, because it's what makes you the most happy, right? We'll realize it's not from the production. It's not like our film production, which would be like, instead of our crops back in the day, our film production back in the day, that feeds man, that feeds others. It's not because you make a movie that they're being fed, but it's his word, God's word, that preserves those who trust in him. It's the word of God that preserves those who trust in him. So we have to stay close to this word of God. And while what was not destroyed by fire was melted when simply warmed by a fleeting ray of the sun, to make it known that one must rise before the sun to give thanks, and must pray to thee at the dawning of light. For the hope of the ungrateful man will melt like wintry frost and flow away like wastewater. If we put our hope in cameras, if we put our hope in technology and lighting and amazing things of the trade, even other people's amazing talents, it's going to melt away like wintry frost. Like, just imagine, the sun comes out in the morning and immediately it melts away. What does this have to do with being a high gear filmmaker? This gearbox behind me, that gear ratio there's 60 gears on the top one and 10 on the bottom. That's 6-1. For every time that bottom gear spins 6 times, the top gear only spins once. The productivity is 6-1. Would you not like everything that you do to have that kind of ratio? Like, you rotate once and it folds a 6-fold of productivity? That's what God's offering you. Like, that is what he's offering you with your craft. But we have to take him up on it. So what is this? How do we get this? How do we make this happen? Well, it's the interior life, right? But this is why it's important. It's important that we stay aligned, that we keep lining up our gears. We keep it well maintained. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm like one of the worst car maintainers there is, and it's a miracle that my cars drive. And I've had multiple transmissions go out. It's the worst. It's the worst. Now, let's talk about this 6-1 ratio. What is it? How do we get 6 gears to equal 1? Or 1 gear to equal 6? That's probably the best way to say it. Okay, let's look at that. Let's look at this. So let's think about the 3 pillars of the spiritual life: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Okay, those are the 3 pillars of your spiritual life. You got to pray. And it says there in the Wisdom of Solomon, it's like, before the sun comes up, you got to give thanks. So being thankful is a huge part of what it's talking about, what Solomon's talking about. Being thankful every day. First thing, before your feet hit the floor, is letting your knees hit the floor. Don't get on with your day. Don't start thinking about what needs to be done. Give thanks to God. That's got to happen. That's got to happen. All right. So that's the prayer. There's more to prayer. You got to have the prayer life going on. But thanksgiving, prayer, almsgiving, fasting. I want to read you something from Mark chapter 9, verse around 29 is the core. But I want to set this up a little bit. They are on top of Mount Tabor. Jesus brings Peter, James, and John up to Mount Tabor. And God appears to them in a cloud. And they're hanging out and they're talking to Moses and Elijah. It's like crazy big deal stuff going on. Like crazy. Just like Peter's like, oh my goodness, they want to build tents. They want to stay there, but they don't get to stay there. They got to come down from the mountain. And right when they come down, they come into town. And then the disciples are there and they're arguing. Oh my gosh. They're arguing with the scribes. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, they saw Jesus, they were greatly amazed and ran up to him and greeted him. Now, why were they greatly amazed? Were they greatly amazed because they saw Jesus? Or did Jesus, was he still showing the glory of the Lord more than usual because he was just up on Mount Tabor? Like when Moses went up to get the 10 Commandments, when they made that covenant with God, he had to veil his face because he was just shining. He was glowing. People were like, whoa, what's going on with Moses, right? So they're coming down from this glorious experience. And so he asked them, he said, okay, what are you guys talking about? And they said, and one of them said, teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a dumb spirit, and wherever it seizes him, it dashes him down. He foams and grinds his teeth, and he becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able to. So this father he's got a son. His son is just being tortured by this mute demon for a long time. And I mean, it's physically hurting him. And he's at his wit's end. And he probably heard about Jesus, and then his disciples were there, and they didn't know, well, your followers do something. And they can't do it. They can't cast it out. They can't cast it out. So Jesus is just oh, faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? He's probably talking to his disciples at this point. He's like, how long am I to bear you? Can you imagine Jesus looking at you, how long am I to bear you? And he's probably saying multiple things I'm not going to be here much longer. The transfiguration just happened. And Jesus just told Peter, James, and John, don't tell anybody about this until after my resurrection. And then at the end of this, he's going to tell his disciples in secret. He's on the third day, I'm going to rise again. They're going to destroy this temple. So there's lots of stuff going on here. So much to chew on. This would make an incredible little piece. An incredible little piece. Oh, faithless generation. Okay, so they brought the boy to him. And when the spirit saw him, he immediately started to convulse in the boy. And the boy fell to the ground and he rolled about foaming at the mouth. So check this out. Here's Jesus. He's standing there. They bring the boy up. The guy's falls on the ground. And he's foaming at the mouth. Jesus is just looking at him so how long has he been like this? Jesus knows. Okay, he knows how long he's been like this, but he asks. Why does he ask? Well, let's see. Maybe we'll figure it out. And Jesus asked his father, and from childhood, the father says, and has often cast him into fire. What? Can you imagine getting your son out of the fire, having to do that? This is crazy. He's lived a hard life. He says, and then thrown him into the water to destroy him, to drown him. Right? This is nuts. But if you can do anything, have pity and help us. And Jesus says to him, if you can do anything. There's no question mark. It's not like if you can. If you can? No, he says, if you can. There's exclamation point. If you can. He just talked about the faith. The faith. Oh, you faithless generation. How long am I to be with you? If you can. This is important, guys. This is like, there's a lot depending on you. This is a lot depending on you. You have to have faith. You have to exercise this faith for your filmmaking, for Jesus Christ, for the glory of God. This is going to be a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But this is like core to what's going on. Okay? We have to practice faith. We have to have trust. So then, and this is going to be us. This is you. This is me. And immediately, Jesus says to him, all things are possible to him who believes. He's talking to us. All things are possible if we believe. Okay? Not in some health and wealth, gospel, prosperity, nonsense, gobbledygook. It's not about that. It's not about winning an Oscar. That's not what he's talking about. He can do all those things, but that's not what he's talking about, because that's not going to bring you joy. Okay? It's not going to bring you joy. So he says, all things are possible to him who believes. And immediately the father of the child cried out and said, I believe. Like, he's so desperate. But he's looking truth in the face. He's like, I believe. And then truth is looking at him, and he knows himself. And he's like, help my unbelief. Because he knows he doesn't believe, and that he believes, but he doesn't believe. It's like those moments we believe for a second, and we're all jazzed up, and then we're like, oh, I can't do this. No, we have to ask the Lord to help us believe, to help us to walk forward, to help us get to this gear ratio to 6 to 1, 100 to 1, an infinite to 1. Immediately, the father of the child cried out and said, I believe, help my unbelief. And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the clean spirit, saying to it, you dumb and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out. And the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, he's dead. The kid's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he rose. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, this is the key. This is what I read all this for. This crazy, demonic stuff going on. And it comes down to this. This. Because imagine, the disciples are trying to help this kid, and they can't. And they've already cast out demons. But they couldn't get it out of this kid. So they're like, I don't get it. I mean, I've been walking with the Lord. I've been walking with him. I've been trying. I've been praying. I've been with him, listening to his teachings. I haven't cast out demons. Why couldn't I cast out this demon? What have I done? What's wrong with me? So they say to him, they're probably like looking at each other like, ask him. I'm not asking him. You ask him. I'm not asking him. So someone's like, hey, they ask him privately, why could we not cast it out? And Jesus says to them, this kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer and fasting. That's right. Prayer and fasting. I don't know why they cut this out of lectionary. This is like core stuff. Drives me crazy every year. Prayer and fasting. We have to fast. That's one of the pillars, one of the 3 legs of the prayer, of the spiritual life. Prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Prayer, fasting. We have to fast. And everyone's like, I can't fast. I don't fast well. High gear, man. You want to be in high gear or not? I'm going to give you a couple pointers on fasting. All right. Yes, it is hard. It's supposed to be hard. It's so hard, you can't do it. I used to fast. When I would fast, I get grumpy. I don't like fasting. Fasting makes me grumpy. It was counterproductive, right? Like I'm not being nice to my wife. I'm being impatient with my kids or whoever's around me. So I was like, Lord, you got to send me, tell me how to fast. So I'm listening to Catholic radio, and I hear Father Mitch Buckwell. Father Mitch goes, someone called about fasting, and he's like, hey, you really should ask your spiritual director, have someone direct you. So I was like, oh, okay, I need someone to direct me. I'm driving my car, and I start praying, Lord, direct me. Send someone to help me learn how to fast. 3 years. 3 years I prayed for that. 3 years. And then finally, surprise, surprise, I'm in a gentleman's office, and he just says to me, do you fast? And I was kind of like, well, not very well. I'm pretty bad at it. And he's like, well, let me share with you a couple things. Here's the big key that he shared, that you have to let the Lord fast for you. You have to let him fast through you. It makes a huge difference. It's not about you doing the fast right. It's about you allowing the Lord to fast through you. It will be hard. It will be, you're going to be like, oh, I'm hungry. And you have to say, sustain me, Lord. Sustain me, Lord. Empty me of myself so that I may be filled with you, and fill me with you so I may be emptied with myself. We have to get this mindset that we are not capable of doing it, except with Jesus Christ. He will fast through you. And it changes everything. Then you know you can't do it. Now, simple fast, okay? Let's just start simply, at least for this video and right now. Your next meal. I want you to look at your lunch or whatever it is, and that, or even before you put it together, if you get to choose what's on it, choose something you like less. If you're out and you get the choice between veggies and French fries, everyone's going to choose French fries, so choose the veggies. You like them less, right? Whatever it is, this is not a time to like squirm around this. No, choose it and say, and as you choose it, before you choose it, say, sustain me, Lord. Help me, Lord. I can't do it. You do it. You fast. And let that be your fast. Just something simple. You don't have to go crazy. All right? And then let that build. Build on it. And food is I don't know why food is so powerful in fasting. It is. But yeah, fast from TV, fast from your phone. You increase your fast before Mass. Like, just stay off your phone. That's something we do in our house. We just don't turn on Sunday mornings when we're going to Mass. We just don't turn on any electronics in the morning until after Mass. It's awesome. These are simple little things. You can do this. Okay. Then let's move on to one more, almsgiving. You've got to make sacrifices. You have to, in this idea of like, and it's not just like 10%. No, you just give one without counting the cost. That's not always easy. It's hard, right? And you have talents. These are some of your talents maybe you should be giving away. But financially too, give. And do it with a cheerful heart. Like, do it with a smile. Don't do it grumpily. Because, people go probably through the whole life without tithing, without almsgiving. Like Scrooge, that's a great film. And what was it? That guy was a miserly curmudgeon, and he was so miserable, and because he wasn't charitable. But then when he learned, because he was visited by 3 ghosts, when he learned, like I'm going to give. And he gave, like the joy. He was giving away all kinds of stuff. He was like ecstatic with joy, buying big turkeys and giving the kids big tips for carrying the turkey. And whatever. He dressed up like St. Nicholas. All those things were going on. Once he realized, I have been a fool. The Lord is telling us, don't be like that. We have to train our bodies. We have to keep, there's paintings, of people that are just sprawled out, and it's they're just intoxicated, or they're gluttonous. I think the painting is called something like gluttony or something like that. And they're just all horizontal because the stomach is as high as the brain, as the head, the mind. These are our passions, right? These are our passions. And our passions cannot rule our mind. It has to be. That's why our head is on top of our brain. I mean, well, yeah, it's on top of it's inside, but our head is on top of our body. Our mind has to rule our passions. These things need to be practiced. And this is going to be a big juice to your filmmaking process. You will be more creative. I'm telling you, when you get this locked up together, when your mind, when your soul is in charge of your passions, when you're letting the Lord work through you, it's going to come out. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. So high gear filmmaking is about drawing on the eternal, the supernatural, so that big gear of the Lord will control us, the little one, and we will spin like mad, and he will spin us, but we have to let him spin us, because you know how hard that little gear would turn trying to spin that big gear? A lot of wasted energy. And just think of all the wasted energy you've had. I think of all the wasted energy I've had. Things, the time, years. I've wasted years when I look at it. I think that's pretty good for today. And the next time I see you, I want to see Christ in you.